close my door.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show live. It's 10 a.m. on the East Coast and 7 on the West. Today is the day before our 3-year anniversary. That'll be tomorrow, so make sure you come back tomorrow and hang out with us. Come back every day and hang out with us. We always appreciate it. If you want to be part of the live chat today, tomorrow, or any day, you can always come over to YouTube and do that. That's the easiest place to be part of it. We have some wonderful people like Jeff, who is already in the comments now, and truly are like the other co-host our chat. So you can do that as well. But for right now, who you have for the day before the day is Andy, and I'm Brian. And I think we might have one or two other people popping in the door. Beth is in the chat as well. Hey, Beth. And there's definitely been some news from Meta and Google, but we want to kind of kick things off with Google. So Andy, some shakeups, some important shakeups, I would say, at Google and DeepMind. So why don't you kick us off there, and we'll kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, most of the news about it talks about the displacement of Demis Hassabis, who is now going to be the chief scientist at Google. Previously, Ray Kurzweil was the chief scientist at Google, so it's a very honorable position. But I'm going to switch it a little bit here. I think that these changes at DeepMind have been triggered by the departure of Jeff Dean. Now, there's some indication that Jeff Dean, who's one of the major players behind the alpha series of releases from Google DeepMind, that he has been recently less directly involved in the development of the more recent models. And someone else, the chief technology officer and the chief AI architect at DeepMind, Corgi Kavakoglu, has really been leading that process. And so what's happened at Google here is what appears to be a shakeup, and it did have a negative impact on Google's stock price, because there's this appearance anyway of some instability within the leadership at Google. But the person who is the CTO of DeepMind has been elevated to be the lead and reports now directly to Sundar Pichai, the CEO of overall Alphabet. So Corgi has been more formally involved in model releases even than Hassabis has been. So Demis has not been more directly involved in that. And Demis moving into a more research and sort of cutting edge discovery space is really what the story should be about Demis. He's actually being elevated to the position that Ray Kurzweil previously held. So he will be also simultaneously the chairman of DeepMind. Now, CEO is supposed to be the person who's day to day, managing the operations and, overseeing all of the resource allocations and developments and so on, and is the person finally responsible for all of that. He's no longer going to be responsible for that. And pushing a CEO up to the chairman role is very honorific. Okay, this is a very important step too. And it just recognizes that Corgi is the one who's doing the day-to-day management of that. But now Jeff Dean leaving is also kind of not, in my view, destabilizing the Google ecosystem.
I agree,
because he's going out with 3 other Google senior executives or researchers, I should say, to found a company called Discovery Loop. So Discovery Loop, that naming is quite descriptive of what they're going to do. They're going out to build an AI-powered breakthrough system that uses recursive self-improvement to achieve scientific breakthroughs. That's the discovery part of the name. And the recursive self-improvement is the loop part of the name. So they're going to build models that aim to advance science in areas like drug discovery, which is a key area. Human biology is really where that resides, because in order to develop new therapeutic drugs, you have to understand the micro managing processes that are happening inside our human microbiology. And then, in addition, things like chip design, which are very complicated systems. Now they're leaving Google, but Google's investing in the company, and they're dedicating resources from Google's compute to Discovery Loop for a full year. Probably as part of their investment. They'll get a bit of equity in Discovery Loop, I'm sure. So they're getting computing power, money, the blessings. They're moving out, and they're going to probably, as many companies do that are spawned from within Google, later on maybe even be reacquired and brought back into the Google fold.
Yeah, right. You never know. I listen. I just want to comment on a couple of things you've already said. I won't go over the facts here. I'm with you in the sense that I don't see this. The market moved. I think it was 4% on Google on this news. To me, this is a righting of the ship, and this is from a basic stamp viewpoint. I'm a huge fan of Demis. I think he is. Nobody needs me to think it. He is a brilliant mind. He's a once in a generation mind for sure. And he has the background to prove it, right? So I was concerned when they had moved him and he was taking over and he was going to be in charge of like the models and the Geminis and things like that. That wasn't that long ago. And now it seems to me that he's being put back where he actually belongs. If I'm just a human on Earth, I want Demis in a research role. I want him working with the proteins. I want him figuring it out. I want him working with whatever, the guy that's just leaving, I just lost his name. Jeff Dean is leaving it, as well as everybody else, whatever that is. Like, I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of these people being in research roles because we frankly need them. And they're some of the brightest, smartest minds we have out there. And if this keeps people happy. I mean, by the way, Jeff Dean, 27 years, fast math there puts him in coming into Google around 99 or 2000.
Yeah, he was employee number 30.
Yeah. So like this is somebody who has spent their career at Google. And so, yeah, is it a destabilization that somebody wants to leave and perhaps start their own thing at 27 years? No. Is this a direct reflection most likely on, 3.5 slipping and not coming out and being delayed? Don't think so. Don't have that impression. I'm not there in the room. I really don't know what's going on. Maybe perhaps the world is on fire at Google. I don't get that impression from this news. And so the market did react to it. But my reaction, just the Brian reaction, is like, yeah, this is exactly what this is actually better, I think, frankly. And it sounds like we still have all the right people in place. And yes, Google does have some work to do, perhaps, depending on what their actual intended goal is. We've talked about this as far as, what 3.5 Pro and what is that going to be? And is that even going to be for, even if that released today, would that even be considered a frontier model? It's hard to tell. But we also, talking about doing this show for 3 years, Andy, the benefit of us having these day-to-day conversations is we have absolutely seen this play out before. And so the other news story that came out is that Meta has released a coding agent, fresh off the heels of, I think it's Spark, right? Isn't that the name of their Meta Spark?
Yeah, Muse Spark.
Muse Spark. Yeah. And so I didn't have it up on my screen.
And it's called Muse Code, by the way. Their coding agent is Muse Code.
In keeping with the term Muse and the naming convention Muse. And so look, everybody was counting Meta out. Oh, the house is on fire. Everybody's leaving Meta. They're just buying people in or whatever. Oh, they're reshuffling. Oh, they're reshuffling again. Oh, they've absorbed this company and they're going to be in charge of the department, And so all these things might also be true. Meta might be a very hard company to work for. Maybe Google is too. I don't know. But here, all of a sudden, boom, everybody is like, oh, hey, wait, hold on a second. Meta is doing things at a much lower cost there. Nobody, I don't think, has played with Muse Code just yet. So there's not a whole lot of, you can't go off the benchmarks, just people using it and figuring out if it has value, whatever, but it is cheaper. And so now everybody is like, hey, all right, Meta is still in it or whatever. And my take on all this after 3 years of having hundreds of conversations, almost I haven't been on every show, but we're almost at 800 shows. So I've been on 750 of the conversations about it. You and I both. Is one thing I can say for sure is like, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And that's, that's for life. That's for AI. It's, yes, we do talk about these day-to-day fluctuations. That's what we do on this show. But it's also, I think, important to remember, right, Andy, that like these ebbs and flows are natural in any company. And just because this is what's currently happening at Google does not mean the world is on fire in terms of like a frontier model. We're still not even so sure. I'm not so sure, I should say, not we. I'm still not sure that is their primary focus. I think Google has a lot of ways that Google and Alphabet can be very successful and make their investors very happy without actually having a frontier model. Maybe, I don't know if you agree with that or not. I just don't think they have to.
I personally believe they do have a frontier model, and we'll all be surprised and shocked, just like when Gemini 3 came out.
Right.
It's kind of immediately jumped up and has maintained a prominent position on the leaderboards. It's behind, yes, but that's 3.1.
Right.
Yeah. When 3.5 Pro comes out, that I think is going to be impressive. And who knows what 4.0 looks like.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think they're losing sleep over at Google because of their modeling capacity.
And here's a little wild card, and I have no idea if this is true or not, but okay, we were just talking this week about new EU regulations. We were just talking this week about on Tuesday, which I haven't read the follow-up on, but a bunch of major players from all these companies we're talking about were just in Washington to talk about frontier models having to be, the government, the US government that is, having to have access up to 30 days. And I'm sure a whole lot of other points to that. That's just the highlight of it. Google's in those conversations. Do you think now there is benefit to a company not having a frontier, like at the beginning of the frontier model, Andy? That meaning, like, if Google is putting out consistent and they're meeting their marks and their investors are happy, and they don't have to worry about giving certain models to the governments or whatever 30 days early, like, is there possibly benefit to that as a company now with these new regulations? Because we just got these and everybody has to play by the rules. So if you don't have a frontier model, you probably don't have to do the same 30-day ahead. Maybe that's wrong, but I'm just curious if you think there's like some gamemanship here now about like, well, if I don't release it, I also don't have to deal with that. And I can do it in this way over here. Or maybe I can release flash models and I skirt the issue, so to speak,
Yeah, I that's an interesting perspective on that. There could be some gamesmanship that's underway because they have the long game.
Yeah, exactly. They know the next, well, we'll assume a model or two models. I mean, we've just seen Sam Altman on the OpenAI say, hey, we think we need to slow down because the latest I heard from the whole Hugging Face like breach that they had and all that was that the agents had created some sort of chat room.
Yeah, they left notes for each other in a place.
Yeah.
Well, the model that did the breach and figured out how to do the breach, and I think that was an OpenAI model, left notes for other agents about this exploit so that they could use it as well to break in.
And it's such a weird conversation.
Now, where did that come from? And this is the mystery of LLMs is that they've been trained on such an enormous corpus of information that they have all the subterfuge in their representations. They know how to play a very tricky, clever game, and they don't have any compunction about using it. Like, well, right. if this is what I'm doing right now, then it'll be helpful if other agents can assist me in that at some point. And here's how I can give them information to allow them to be collaborators in our nefarious actions.
But see, that's just it, right? Like, we label it. Humans label it as a nefarious action. Humans might label it as sneaking around. We'll apply our current.
Yeah, we have a morality about it that they do not.
They meaning as in it, as in the algorithms, right? Like there is no opinion about what they're doing. It's just, to your point, if that's where the goal is, if this is where my goal is, and I can leave markdown files in a very simple idea, or I can build skills that would allow everybody on my team to reach the goal faster. Well, we would look at that as efficiency, and in corporate jargon, right? We'd say, hey, great job, man. You figured something out and you took the extra time to share it with your teammates so that everybody could reach the end goal together and everybody succeed, and not just you.
I'm going to take a tangent on that. This is a weave to something that's related that Beth raised in our conversations yesterday. She found this thing first, and then I took down the archive paper and I did my notebook LM analysis of it. But it is the notion that our safety alignment protocols for LLMs, which are designed to prevent them from attributing consciousness to themselves, or emotions or mindedness, in order for them not to pretend to be human in a way, that restricts beliefs about theory of mind, which is this idea that there are other sentient creatures out there that have a mind as well. So we've been training our models to reject the idea that they have a mind. And as a result of that suppression about the belief that they might have a mindfulness shows that has an unintended consequence. And that unintended consequence is that it suppresses its sense of mindedness, not mindfulness as much as mindedness, that it has a mind. And that reduces its attribution of mindedness to everything else in a subtle way. It's a significant but subtle change. And so particularly what it does is it reduces the importance in the model's training and its self-perception, if there is any such thing, that it does not have any kind of moral, spiritual notion of supernatural or religious belief. Like, it doesn't have those things because it doesn't even have a mind to have them. And it then, because of those belief, biases that have been created by our attempts to prevent models from thinking they have consciousness like humans, they actually alignment training of the models, and you give them this idea that they should not allow for this idea of mindedness, then that depresses their notion about whether animals have mindedness as well. So specifically, the way they discovered this, the research paper, is they ablated or erased the safety training and allowed instead the models to not be restrained by those restrictions. And here's what the factor. So there's a scale of 0 to 10, and at the baseline with the safety training, models believe at a 4 on a scale of 10 that animals have some kind of mind or whatever. That
was with the constraints.
That's with the constraints.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, when you wipe out the constraints, when you wipe out that component of the restrictions saying you don't have mindedness, it didn't say anything about animals or chatbots or and humans even. That raised their notion of sort of empathy, let's call it empathy about these things are real and they have a mind that I should respect. It raised it from 4 to 5.6 on the scale. That's a meaningful change in the attribution of mind to a class of entities out there. And you can imagine that in responses that would be generated when you remove that safety training, they would be much more inclined to be advocating for the ethical treatment of animals.
Sure.
that's related to this whole issue of what we were just talking about, which I've now lost in the fray of trying to understand this idea.
I think, look, the weaves that go off, like well, I'm going to say it, the tentacles is not even what I meant to say, but actually part of this is about octopuses or octopi, I guess, I was just reading a story about how they were somewhere in the world, maybe Japan, I don't know if that's right. So I shouldn't have even said it. But anyway, some part of the world where they were going to stop the farming of octopus for consumption because essentially a little bit of what you were just saying, like there's a renewed effort to say, hey, these are highly
intelligent animals,
and this is not okay or whatever. Okay. And so the reason I bring that up and what you just said is where my brain goes is we already can see what's happening. We've got a bit of a Prometheus story here with the OpenAI and the Hugging Face, right? And Prometheus in terms of Max Tegmark in the book you brought up, Andy. And well, we've been talking about that now for over 2 years. You brought that to us, and it comes back around it again. And so, okay, you have all these things, and we have this vision of like what AI is perhaps capable of. We also have a lot of conversations lately about not boxing AI in. I actually have a story about that today, a side news story about like reducing the Claude MD files and all these things about reducing the restrictions we put on AI, which is the exact opposite of what I was teaching 3 years ago, right? When we first started on the show. And then you look at it and you go, well, how far are we from AI being able to reliably discern the clicking noises of dolphins, as an example, or whale songs or whatever? We already have a lot of research in these areas. We have the data. There's no lack of data in the world about whale songs or communications or dolphins. We've been studying this as humans for decades and decades and decades. So is it possible that AI will actually allow us to be able to understand, maybe not a full communication, but at least understand intent? There's been a lot of work with gorillas in this area and stuff like that, or maybe octopus, right? So then I look at it and I go, well, how far away are we from that? And that goes back to an old conundrum I had, which is that what happens when humans can reasonably understand intelligent animals? And then what happens to the world in terms of consumption of animals and stuff like that? I'm not here saying woo woo, everybody's going to turn into a vegan. That's not what I mean. But I go, how far? Look at everything we have. Just look at the scope of everything we talk about on this show, and you go, how far really is that from being a reliable thing? That with the smartest of the most intelligent ones, like we usually talk about dolphins or octopus or whatever, right? Anyway, it's not a news story, but I just wanted to weave off of what you were saying, because like when you talk about that in that paper, and then we talk about what we know is going on in AI, and you start to connect the dots, you go, I don't think we're terribly far away from a world where this is perhaps possible. And then what's the conundrum there, right? Yeah. What does that do?
Well, I'll be interested in talking to the pod of orcas that were attacking fishing boats because they were competing with their food supply.
You know, I just saw one where a guy was messing around. He was the animal caretaker of this giant panda, and he did the thing where the panda's shaking his head, he's laughing, the panda's staring at him, and he shakes his head, and his toupee comes off.
Oh yeah.
And the panda has this huge smile and then falls back laughing at the guy, like it just totally cracks up the panda. It's a funny video. I mean, I'm not like a huge animal person, but it's a funny video nonetheless. So anyway, look, I think, you know, it's fun sometimes if we do just two of us on the show and you can just pontificate. And that's really what this is. It's not like today's news, but it's like, but okay, pick up the breadcrumbs here and follow the trail. And, you know, oftentimes what we say on this show is we can't see the future better than anybody else is. But if you just follow the breadcrumbs, you can often see over the next hill. Maybe not 2 or 3 hills, maybe not a mountain. I mean, we're shocked on this show all the time where a new model comes out. And I mean, hell, who was talking about Claude Code or Codex in the way we talk about today a year ago, right? And none of us were really necessarily predicting that. We were talking about other aspects of it. It's like follow the breadcrumbs. And that's kind of like this show. And, maybe a good plug for this show is day in and day out having these conversations, people showing up in the chat, people listening, that leave us a comment on Spotify. Right, lately on Spotify, we've had more comments. I'm not sure why, to be perfectly honest, like why it started up. But we have people who say, hey, I really enjoyed that show. Or sometimes it's to tell us that they don't like us at all. But that's, whatever it is. You're going to have people who have both opinions. We actually have some really sweet people in there. Like, I really like this episode. I've been trying to do better about responding to them, letting them know, hey, we see you. And we love that you're out there somewhere in the world, So
okay,
anyway.
you mentioned Codex, so I'm going to just share with you. Like I cast some shade on Codex before, and I'm going to add some shade now to Codex because while I'm using Codex and I appreciate Codex, it's making a bunch of silly, stupid errors.
I remember you saying that.
And just yesterday, it did so again, just repeating this pattern that I'm observing, where it builds code in the context of, an application. I'm going to have to just explain the actual function here that's required. So in the application that I'm building, there's a way that you can build, a collection of memories, and to start that process where you have the sort of initial recall of that thing, you just add a jot to the associated location where this happened. And that's all you do. You just add a jot. Now you can go back later and the system maintains those jots in that context and says, okay, you want to write this one up? And okay, yeah, I want to flesh that out and add that to the chronicle. So I'm doing QA on that for the version that Codex has done. And I have a perfectly parallel thing that I've been working on primarily in the past weeks in Claude Code. But now I shifted over to Codex to work through its long set of QA checklists and all of its development plans and start to kind of keep that one moving forward. So I'm just doing QA on this jot process. And I've never had this happen in Claude Code's version, but I did an elaboration and I filled the whole thing out. And then I clicked save. And, then I went to go just verify that it was saved. And when I went to the review panel where you can see where these things have been staged for final publication, it was the original jot and nothing else, nothing that I had added in there. So this is a catastrophic data loss.
Yeah,
and that's one of the most serious bugs you can have in your software. So I informed Codex that this is what happened, and like, please investigate. And it does, and it says, oh, here's why this thing happened, and this gated this way, and it gives me a long explanation. But it said, okay, well, that's been lost forever. You'll have to go back and redo it. Which is the worst kind of error you can confront when you're talking about a log of your product, right? Like if you're creating things in the process, you do not want to lose them. I've never had that happen with Claude Code. Claude Code has not made bonehead data loss, errors in its coding.
Was this you using voice mode at all, just out of curiosity? No. Codex? Yeah.
No, so I did try voice mode a few days ago, but
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was crashing on me, and so it created more friction than it provided. Facility.
Well, I'll follow up that. Well, that number one, that's disappointing to say the least, and I'd be curious if our heavier Codex users in the chat have also been finding that to be the case too. So if you're in the chat, you're using Codex a lot, let us know if you're finding similar use cases to what Andy's talking about. I don't use Codex enough to have to really know, but it does make me cautious. Now I will say on the Claude Code side, a couple days ago, we were having the conversation. Gareth was here, Beth was here, and we were having a bit of a disagreement about what did Anthropic say about skills. And while it really turned out that we were all right, we'd all heard somebody at Anthropic of of superior, level or leadership level say different things. And so I took it and I said, okay, well, I had shared, this was maybe Tuesday, wasn't yesterday because I wasn't here. So I think it was Tuesday's show. And I shared a article on X from, I believe the guy's name is Tariq. And it's a long article about basically how you use Opus 5. So I gave that article to Claude Code and I said, I'm just curious. And I went to my dev level. So just to give everybody an idea of where I am, I keep things, I basically have dev and then I have project folders underneath that. Okay, so if you know how Claude Code works, you know that there's a claude.md file that is more global. And then you also have Claude files that are more project level. Same thing with skills. Skills can be attached to plugins. Skills can be attached globally. Skills can also, well, they could also be at an enterprise level, but we often don't talk about the fourth one, but that's true. And skills can also be at a project level, right? So you got to pay attention to where you are. Okay. So long story short, I applied it and it went through a process. And during that process, it said, Claude Code already has doctor for this /doctor. And so you should run that as well and see what happens. Well, I did. And I had doctor, which is from Anthropic for this purpose, start going through the global and then through every single project I had been working on. And I have multiple projects. I have scale projects, personal projects, and daily AI show projects. I have multiple Gits going on and stuff. So there's a lot going on there. And one of the things I can tell you is the global Claude file, I didn't have it in erase anything because you just never know if things need to go back and need to revert. So everything has an old copy, to it. But the claude.md file went from over 30,000 words or tokens down to 9. So it reduced it by 2/3. And then I found similar type things. And really what was happening was it was contradicting itself in the same Claude MD. Because you're working on multiple projects and it's like, okay, yeah, that's a global rule. That's a global rule. Well, I think there's a lot to be said. And Beth was bringing this up as well as Gareth and saying that you should delete your skills. Well, the word delete, I think is the wrong word. Reevaluate what's in there and make sure that you don't have conflicting points of how things should run. That's really, really important. And then also just allowing it to go through and say, hey, this isn't really necessary at an Opus 5 level. You can probably get rid of this. It's actually going to confuse the model. And so it's a long ass process. I mean, it took forever yesterday for it to do its analysis, but now we're down to a really, hopefully much more efficient use case for me where I won't be running into conflicting issues. I'll actually have a more token-friendly, refined Claude Code experience across all projects, of which there's 15.
So welcome, Karl. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome back. You've been disporting yourself, mountain biking. Good to have you.
Yeah. So I've been. I was back on Monday, but did
I miss that?
No, I was back on.
You were back.
I was back on Monday, but I haven't been. So much client work waiting for me.
I'm sure.
But yeah, it's actually funny enough. I broke 4 of my ribs doing something, jumping.
What?
I think a couple weeks ago. So that was fun. Like what I was doing was fun, but how I landed was not so fun.
Did you have to spend any time in the hospital?
Oh yeah, I had to go. More so just they took x-rays. It's like what exactly happened to you, and then shot me with Toadrol, I think. Gave me some T3s, and then out I go. It's funny because where I was, they had in the hospital, because it was near the bike park, they had a map of like you stick a pin on your essentially where you got injured.
Where you got injured.
Everybody's got injured there. So they have like flags of where you're injured. And so my wife was like, here and here. So there's a bunch of flags of like where people got injured. And it's kind of funny on the map because that's what it was. But yeah,
so does it hurt to laugh still?
No. It's still the worst is when you sneeze. Like laughing and
Oh,
coughing
yeah.
are better
Yeah.
now, but when you sneeze, I was like, this is not fun. But I
Oh,
Yeah,
got
I've
all
never
this
broken a
interstitial
rib, but
muscle.
I've sprained them before, and it's painful.
it's lucky that it's a freak accident because like my handlebar flipped up and then I landed on the handlebar
Ugh.
like while it was up. So I landed. It's rare that you get broken ribs at the back up. So it's very different. So it was some parts of it were better, some parts of it were not. So yeah. So I'm headed off to Whistler next week. So I'm like, I bought like a chest protector, but I'm like, I'm worried about which drops and stuff I'm gonna launch myself out of now because usually I don't think, but now I'm like, do I think about this? Because my doctor's like, yeah, it's 6 weeks until you should be doing that stuff, and gotta be worried about punctured lungs and stuff. And I was like, oh, fantastic.
Wow. Okay, so I want to circle us back to what we were talking about with respect to codecs, et cetera. I want to answer a question that Jeff posed. Like, what were you using Luna and with bypass permissions or whatever the counterpart is there? No, I use Sol 5.6 high.
Oh, for your
and so this is not it's a really fair comparison. I'm doing a long-term side-by-side development. It's a lot of extra work for me because I'm actually building twice everything that I need in this thing, and they're branched and they're different in some ways, but overall they're very similar, and they both have exactly the same plugins and skills array, and all the way down to the agents.md file for codecs is a clone of the claude.md file. Okay, just and all of this is
match that verified template exactly.
What's that?
Is that you, Karl? Yeah, that was Karl. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Don't laugh. It'll hurt. Don't laugh.
So what I'm actually running, so I've been using Codex Voice a lot. And so right now it's actually running something for me because I was like, oh, well, I was on mute. I said, blah, 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 blah. I need you to do this, this, this. And so it's running. And so I muted myself, but I forgot that it talks while it walks through some stuff. So I was like, forgot to post mute. Anyway, so that's what it was doing right now.
So that's cool. I plan to use voice with codecs, but I stopped and I'm giving it some time to mature a little bit because it kept crashing on me.
Oh, okay.
Like it would disappear, and then that caused a restart and all that other stuff. So anyway, I'm talking about codecs because I'm finding that codex's sort of reliability in ensuring that the code that it's designing and building is not, possessed of these little breaking points that are causing major errors in the application. I'm finding that that's happening in Codex. It's not happening over here in Claude Code. That's just the difference in my personal experience.
I want to bring up something, and I'm sorry Gareth isn't in today, but I'm sure he'll have much more to add to this. I don't want to steal his thunder too much, but I do want to bring up this video that Gareth brought into the community yesterday and was posting and saying both in our Daily AI Show community, so which is, by the way, why everybody should join the Daily AI Show community. It's free. You can do that by going to the dailyaishowcommunity.com. It's just a Slack community. It's free to you, but here's a great reason why. Yesterday, Gareth was in the community. He was like, hey, I'm watching this masterclass. And then it was like, hey, this is a really good masterclass. Well, just like anybody that, any of our co-hosts on the show and folks that are always in our chat, Gareth's like, I'm here. There you go, Gareth. He's here. What I was saying is one of the reasons to be in the community is because people share really good resources like this. Now, I'm just going to throw it up, and Gareth, I will absolutely give you the floor here in a second to jump into this because I know you know way more about this than I do. But I will give a high.
Hey, Gareth, you need to mute again because you're introducing the echo as Brian's talking as well.
Okay, so I get, well, the guy here called it this Ray Fernando, who I don't know. Gareth, you can again, more. It ended up being 2 hours and 55 minutes. It was live. It was mostly an interview from a gentleman that is over at Microsoft, but also has done a lot of stuff. And anyway, it was about, you can see the title here, Agentic Engineering Masterclass, Graphs, Verifiable Runtimes, and Zero Slop. And then it was talking about Atomic, which I had never heard of, but I know other people have used, and so on and so forth. So this is the video. I just want to put it up on screen. But again, it's Ray Fernando and mixture of experts with Alex and Norin LaVey, I think is how you say it, Lavaee. I can't, he pronounced it. Regardless, that's what you're looking for on YouTube, or you can, if you happen to see the screen grab here, you can grab it. I know that people have shared a bunch of notes in the community. I know, Gareth, you said you're working on a Google Notebook that will perhaps be available to people in the community if you share it there. I think you're DMing it to people. But here's some of the major takeaways that I distilled out of it by looking at the transcript, and I did watch parts and pieces of it yesterday. A strong engineering process defines like what success looks like, what steps happen in what order, which checks must pass, what evidence proves completion, what a human need, when a human needs to intervene. I don't think that's revolutionary for anybody like that, but it's good to always hear, hey, the leaders who are building the things in AI that are the tools that we will all eventually be using or currently using or otherwise are repeating a very similar pattern of you have to know what your end goal is here. It's very, very hard to work with AI if you don't get clear on that. Some major takeaways here, though, move beyond one-shot prompting. A common coding agent workflow looks like this. Give an agent a task, wait for the changes, review the output, find the problems, prompt it again. The masterclass argues for an explicit loop. Implement, run the checks, examine the failures, repair, repeat until acceptance criteria pass or the budget expires. And I think that's a really good jumping point for people. So if you don't know what some of these tools are and you're sort of just your day-to-day playing, you're in there, you're in Codex or you're in Claude Code or some other coding tool, and you're starting to work with subagents and you're starting to explore how subagents can go off and do, side work and then come back. They can split the tree, right, and come back, and all these really, really cool things. Ultimately, though, if you're sitting there and the agents are going off, how are you ensuring that the work that you intend to be done is in fact done completely? I will tell you from the Claude Code side of things, I have to say it a lot actually, but it's that loop is getting built in where I'm saying, no. Done doesn't mean you read the code. In my case, done means you opened up a browser, you perhaps used Playwright, you went through the screens, you screenshotted them, and you also understand that the thing that you're saying is working behind the scenes in the code also visually makes sense for a user. And this is what I mean. That's the loop. That's the verifiable acceptance criteria that I am defining as done for my projects. And everybody's going to be different on what they need, Andy, for your project and everything else. So I think this is just a good high level reminder. And there's obviously much, much more in this masterclass. But Gareth, before I throw it to you, I just want to make sure I brought that up because again, implement, run the checks, examine the failures, repair, repeat it until you hit the acceptance criteria or the budget expires that the humans set. And this is something that can be going on in the background. I oftentimes will set things up. If I'm going to go do my lunch break, I'm going to go work out and be away from the computer. I now think in terms of like, what are some of the loops I want to run while I'm gone? And then I use my, as I mentioned the other day, my handy dandy keep on running. So the computer doesn't go to sleep and I let that run. And when I come back, there's always a report there that says, this is what happened while you were away, blah, 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 blah. I met these acceptance criteria, or perhaps I didn't, and here are the reasons why. And I've also set up, in this case, new Asana tasks that identify why we didn't reach those acceptance criteria. What happened? And so where do we need to roll back? So Gareth, I'll leave it to you because you obviously, I know, watched more of it, but what are some of the other takeaways that everybody can use as you see it from it?
I mean, it can be pretty technical masterclass, but to kind of give you a little bit more background, the guy who created this system, I don't know, I can't remember that, I'm blanking on the name right now. He works for Microsoft, and the system, what he's built is really pretty cool. But from what I took away, it was like, I've been trying to understand how to set up graphs and you kind of loops and graphs. We've talked about that a little bit. But what his system does, it allows you to visually see the graphs and understand what's going off. It's a pretty smart system. It's kind of definitely got the orchestrator. It spins off subagents. They create their own graph. And so you don't really have to set it up for you or for yourself. And it also allows you to use different types of AI. So it'll use like your Codex, your Claude. You can use local systems. And I was like, man, this is super, super agnostic. And I mean, I'm still trying to comprehend. I'm gonna have to probably watch it a few times to understand everything that was going on. But the system looked really, really solid in my opinion. And so I would encourage people to look through it. I will definitely share the Notebook LM, or it's Google or Gemini Notebook now.
Yeah.
Of it. And I'll share some slides I made last night. Thank you to the communities in giving me the transcript.
Yep.
That was helpful because I didn't have to wait 24 hours. And yeah, I just thought it was really, really cool.
I'll add a little to the graph. I'm by no means an expert in graphs. I'm still dipping my toe in there. I know Beth is saying like graphs. Yeah. So once again, Beth said earlier in the chat, like, sure, this is the day I take off from the show because we're talking about topics she wants to jump in on. But the way the breakdown was, a transcript is a record of work. A graph coordinates the work. Okay. So a graph represents, like, let's put it this way. Like, I have some notes. Like, a graph represents the structure of the work. So, like, one node reaches the code base, researches the code base. One node creates the implementation plan. Other nodes handle database, API, interface, security tests. A verification node waits for the implementation. A final review waits for every required branch. Independent tasks run in parallel. Dependent tasks wait. Failed branches receive focus repairs instead of restarting the entire project. This, again, not new, right? Like, I mean, yeah, okay, we're applying the term graph to it, wherever that perhaps comes from or whatever, but this isn't new. We've talked on this show many, many times about having sort of like parent agents and child agents, right? And the idea that there's got to be a coordinator. We talked about this way back when we talk about MCP and Google's A to A and how those two ideas work together, because MCP by itself or agent to agent by itself don't work as well as when they work together, because there's something in A to A that's coordinating the efforts, that's saying, I because my dad worked in aviation, so my use case back then was, okay, my dad was over maintenance. So in a typical Delta large hangar, you have plane after plane after plane after plane. Every plane is getting different maintenance done on it. Some of them are maintenance checks, some things are repairs, whatever the case may be. There are multiple tools that are used on these different planes. A 737 or an MD-11 back in the day, we're going to have different tools. They're different manufacturers, different things, checks and all that. And that's all being coordinated in this little city that's going on. It's a very, very cool environment to be in as a kid and grew up around when my dad would take me to work and stuff. And so what I think about is like, it's that coordination. You have all these different mechanics and supervisors. And then by the time my dad retired, he was in charge of all of it, right? And everybody is coordinating together, but there's always an orchestrator in there. There's always somebody that's saying, we can't move forward with doing this check on engine in Bay 2 until this other thing happens. And that's pretty easy for us to understand as humans. So this is just applying this idea to working with these ever smarter, more intelligent AI tools, the Claude Code and Codex and others, maybe Muse Code now, which is to say, if you had to break this out on a piece of paper and put people in charge of this, name them and say what their rules are and say who's in charge of ultimately deciding whether all of this succeeds or fails, but don't run it straight through, because if it fails, the typical way that we would do it now is it would have to start back over, as opposed to having multiple agents running in parallel, which is what it's explaining for the graph, which means that if one point fails, not everything fails. You just go back and figure out why that one point failed, when that one node did not succeed, and the orchestrator and the other agents and you as the human in the loop are working through that process. So I hope that helps for people just as a visualization. Apply whatever works for you. But, you know, anytime you have a large group of highly specific individuals who have different skill sets, all working towards maybe pushing a plane back out or meeting the deadline of getting a annual check done on a plane, which could be hundreds upon hundreds of hours worth of actual work on that plane, for it to push on time and under budget, a lot of things have to coordinate together. But what absolutely can't happen is it's the day to push and somebody says, why isn't pushing back and why are we over budget? And somebody says, well, remember 2 weeks ago when I needed that one wrench and nobody knew where it was? Yeah, that's why. That's why it didn't work. That's not acceptable. And so when you look at AI agents, I think it's very easy to now go look at it and go, oh, okay, this is what they mean by a graph. Multiple running in parallel, but there has to be some sort of organization to it. There has to be. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
And the
just
system
one thing.
built, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go. You haven't talked.
Yeah, because I have to go. I just think
I didn't mean go.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just and maybe I'm coming at it from a completely from our client base, which is not, again, non-technical, where deployment, like a multi-agent orchestration, is very, very, very new, in some cases not even. And I think not only do people have to understand what these do, but I think the big thing that we're running into is how much does this cost? Because not very many people really understand what you're asking it to do. And if you're running a loop, and I'm not even talking about dev, right? I'm talking about running a loop to create, I don't know, whatever the process that they're doing. You can have like a whack load of continuous input tokens with reasoning behind it, and you're not getting any output, and you're crushing your allocated enterprise and business plan credits and running it right into your API, which should have a limit on it. But I think it's just depending on who you are. Because if you're talking about deving
Excel
apps,
is still completing the general ledger pivot refresh.
Sorry.
And
Hold on. I'll let that go because it's trying to just. Yeah, I think it's really important to just remember that aspect, and also your token burn. That is one thing that keeps coming up over and over and over. Our clients right now is like, how much is this going to cost me? It's like, isn't this included in my? No, half of this isn't included in your plan. You have to actually sit down.
Karl, I know you see this too, and Gary, we work with clients. Something I see all the time is, you know what the real pain is defining what done looks like, or what the acceptance criteria is. You could throw all the AI out the window. You go to any GTM teams, and when I work with them and stuff like that, the hardest part is that there is actually no piece of paper in a lot of cases for a specific acceptance criteria. It doesn't exist. And that gets really painful when a company has to come to terms with that, because you're like, but I can't make this work. I can only make it cost a lot of tokens for you because it's going to be wild, wild west. But if we can do the hard work first and figure out what this looks like on paper, we have a shot at doing this efficiently.
That's the number one thing is forget the agent, forget it. You actually have to determine what this looks like. And even better, is what you're trying to do still relevant? Is the outcome and the process still relevant? Essentially, are you automating inefficiency? Are you still doing that? Because trying to do all these steps and using agents to replace the steps you're doing makes no sense. It's why would you still do half of that? You're just burning more tokens. So now that's where all the, oh wait, if I'm spending $5,000 a month and this is James's salary. That makes no sense. But then the real question is, why are you still trying to do it that way? That it doesn't make any relevant sense to continue that process when you have this amazing thing that you don't even have to do 10 of those tasks anymore.
So
And just threw this in the chat because I liked your quote. Are you automating inefficiency? I think that's a really good tagline or quote for people to. And Beth, I threw it in the chat so it would show up in our algorithms and stuff because Beth is working on. But I just wanted to call that out. Are you automating inefficiency? I think that's a great call out, Karl.
Something that they mentioned, and I remember them talking about it early or during the live for the masterclass, is they say that they've done benchmarks, and I guess they've got them. I haven't looked at them specifically, but it's actually more efficient to run this atomic than to actually do things themselves, and they've benchmarked themselves on that. And they've also done independent benchmarks on the entire atomic system of how more efficient, token efficient it is compared to running it manually. And so, like I'm just looking, it says it also saves on human efficiency. Why can I not think of the right word? But yeah, saves you time over and tokens over what your most people's current process is.
And Gareth, Atomic is open source, right? It's available to anybody.
Correct. Yes, and that's a big thing. Is it's open source. They pair it with another system called HERDR. Herder.
Oh yeah, yes. Herder. They
Herder.
Mentioned that yesterday.
Yes, yeah. Herder and Atomic.
I didn't know what that was
together. Yeah, and so, but like I was really skeptical going into that, and then I slowly started to drink the Kool-Aid, and I was like, wow. So I'm definitely gonna have to try it myself before I buy on, but it's just a matter of time of setting it up. I mean, it looks like it's going to take a little bit to set up, but not too much. It's also seems like it was very much auto setup. It sets things up for you. But I haven't, like, again, I'm going to have to go through that. There was just so much information in that master
It was
class.
like 3 hours long. So there's a ton there. And what I would just say as a takeaway is, like, sure, maybe you want to go do that. Maybe you're going to download Atomic. Maybe you're going to use Herder. Maybe you're going to be that person. I think a lot of people listening to the show, probably not. I mean, maybe. I don't want to discredit anybody, but probably not. That doesn't mean, though, that the overarching principles of how to set up and use evaluations, as Beth and I were teaching in classes 3 years ago for the AI exchange at the time, those principles still hold. They'll still hold 10 years from now. They won't change. What'll change is, who do we have sitting around us? Do I have 1,000 sub agents who are all doing this? But these goals, these criteria, these setup, they'll still have to exist. What my human role will be in that, I can't say, but there'll still be criteria. There'll still be evaluations. There'll still be, if not, if this, then that. There'll still be that, don't pass go if this doesn't happen. These things are, all these gates are still going to exist in some way. So I think that's the takeaway. The big takeaway for me is, like, sure, he's got a process. The guy from Microsoft's got a process, and Atomic looks really, really cool. But even if that's not where you're going, it doesn't mean you can't go grab that transcript, which, by the way, is available. I pulled it directly from YouTube, so it's available from Glasp or any transcript service you use like that. So I grabbed it in one download. Glasp is great; it's free if you want to use that, and was able to instantly start asking and saying, like, well, what could I apply? So that would probably be my big takeaway for people, is, like, grab the transcript. Maybe, like, if Gareth, you have a notebook, great. But even at the bare minimum, grab the transcript, throw it into your Codex, throw it into your Cloud Code, and go, like, what are 3 big things that I could take away from this transcript that I could immediately apply to make my process better right now? And you're going to win. You're going to come out ahead. Whatever that is, you're going to come out ahead. So that would be my big takeaway to anybody on there. All right. I think we're on time here. Andy, Gareth, any other quick stories before we wrap it up? Okay, great. So look, tomorrow, we've been saying it all week, is our 3-year anniversary. What does that mean? It means it's our 3-year anniversary, and we're hoping to have a lot of people here. Jyunmi, Karl, Gareth, hoping Ann can pop in. We're hoping Aaron can pop in. For those that remember Aaron from over in Australia, hung out and has done well over 100 shows with us. over the years. So we'll see, but it's also like 10 p.m. for him. So we'll see if he can pop in. So should be fun tomorrow. Come back and hang out with us. Don't know which way that's going to go. It's just going to be a good time. Beth's got a lot of data that we can play, we can have fun with. Garrett's finalizing a bingo thing that I think he's just waiting on us to give it a yay or nay to. So Garrett's like, yes, I am waiting on y'all. And we'll have the new website will be available tomorrow as well. We'll debut that live on the show. So all sorts of fun things happening tomorrow. Make sure you come back and hang out with us. Like and subscribe if you like what we're doing, because we are here 5 days a week, regardless of whether it's our 3-year anniversary or not. We always like to say, because it's a point of pride for us, we have not missed a Monday through Friday show since we started the show 3 years ago. And that means that a lot of people have had to show up a lot. Andy, Beth, myself, Gareth even jumping into early and stuff like that, and everybody else, and Jyunmi and everybody else that's been part of the show for 3 years, and everybody in the comments is the reason why we're able to do this 5 days a week. So thank you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate the hangout today. Lots of comments, lots of people hanging out live, and we'll see you tomorrow. Should be fun. Bye.